Hello students. So today we are going to discuss about new topic or the another one form of energy, that is potential energy. In the previous class we have discussed about one of the form of energy, that is kinetic energy. So kinetic energy is nothing but energy possessed by an object due to its motion, isn't it? So reverse of that, kinetic energy reverse is nothing but potential energy. So what is this potential energy means? Potential energy is the energy which is stored. So stored energy is called the potential energy. To understand this, we will take some of the examples so that we will understand what is this potential energy. So let me take an example of a rubber band. So now when a rubber band is kept like this, it doesn't have any of the energy. So now whenever I have stretched that, when I'll stretch that rubber band, I am doing work. That work is converted into the potential energy. That means stored energy. So whenever I have done a work, so I have stretched the rubber band so that it got the potential energy. Now when I released it, it moves away. That means that rubber band has converting the potential energy into kinetic energy. So this is the one of the example. Similar to this, I'll take the string. So that is the string if you consider. So now I am stretching that string. When I stretch the strings like this, so I am doing work so that energy has been stored in that. Now when I stretch the strings, the energy has been stored now. So when I release the string, so that string potential energy, that means what is the energy which is stored in that string has converted into, that is potential energy is converted into the kinetic energy. So to do the potential energy, what is required? So required is work done. So work has to be done, isn't it? So work has to be done means what? In this case, in the case of rubber band, if I consider, I am applying the force on it. So there is some displacement, isn't it? Displacement means stretching has occurred. Similar to this, if I have considered about the string as an example, if you have considered, I am applying force so that the string, displacement of a string is taking place. Due to the displacement, due to the force and displacement, there is a work has done. Due to that work done, energy has stored. So when energy has stored it, when I release that, when I leave that position, so that potential energy is converted into kinetic energy. Since you know what is that kinetic energy means, so kinetic energy is nothing but energy which is in the possessed when an object is moving. So when I released it, the object has moved to certain distance. So that is called the kinetic energy. So in combination, I can say potential energy plus kinetic energy is equals to, I can say it is a mechanical energy. So these are the two types for the mechanical energy. What are the two types? That is, one is potential energy and as well as kinetic energy. So similar to this, I'll take another one example. For example, I have kept this object in this position. So this is the initial position of the object. When I lift the object, I am applying the force against the gravity, isn't it? So this is the initial position of the object. I am lifting that object against to the gravitation. So I am applying, that is work is done, isn't it? I am applying force on this object and there is a displacement. Displacement means there is a change in, that is from initial to the final, there is a change here. So change in distance here. Now when I am applying the force on it, it changes its position. So that means work is done against the gravity. If this work is done, so in this case, due to work done, I am storing a potential energy in this object. I'll show it once again. So I'm applying work to this. So work is done here to lift this object. This object now acquire a potential energy. Now when I release that object, in that cases, that object which which acquired the potential energy now converted into the kinetic energy. So this is also one example. So by this I can define properly about the potential energy as, so what are the cases we have taken as an example. We'll combine all those things. So potential energy I can define as, that is the energy possessed by an object, energy possessed by an object by virtue of its position or configuration. I'll say what it is. So energy possessed by an object by virtue of its position or the configuration. Configuration is nothing but it is the change in shape. Okay. So by virtue of its position means we have considered this object. It has reached certain height, isn't it? It has reached certain height. That means that is called the position here. That is the example for the position you are explaining. Similar to this, for example, I will consider another one example so that you will understand. This is the peak. Certain peak you consider. You have kept a ball here. That means you are applying a potential energy to that ball. When you release the ball from certain height, that ball will comes to downwards. That means that ball is gaining the kinetic energy and coming to the downwards position. So that means energy which is possessed by an object when it is at certain height, that is, it is about the first one, that is energy possessed by object by virtue of its position. Where the position will be certain height, there will be that is the position of the object. Similarly, next one is energy possessed by object by virtue of its shape. You have considered an example of an elastic one. So you are changing the shape. Because of the change in the shape, energy has been stored in that object. Because that energy stored is called it as the potential energy. So the potential energy definition here says energy possessed by an object by virtue of its position at where the height of that object is placed, or about the configuration, or about the shape. So whenever we say this definition, we are going to say about the two types of the potential energy. So whenever we say there is a change in position or certain height, means we are going to say this type of potential energy is called as gravitational potential energy. Gravitational potential energy. Okay, this is the one first type of the potential energy. Similarly, when you are seeing about the configuration, means they are seeing about the elastic potential energy. Okay, elastic potential energy. So these are the two types of the potential energy. One is gravitational potential energy. That means against the gravity, there's certain height has been reached by an object. That energy which is stored in that object is called the gravitational potential energy. And another one, elastic potential energy. Change in the that is the shape of that object, that when that object gains a potential energy, that energy is called, or that potential energy is called the elastic potential energy. So similar to this, I'll give another one example for the certain height. So that means waterfall. You have seen the waterfall. In that, the peak of that waterfall, that is certain height, the energy which is stored, that energy stored, because of that the water will falls down. That means potential energy which is stored at the peak is converted into the kinetic energy. So for this, if you keep the turbines at the down of that waterfalls, the turbines will run so that it will convert into the electrical energy, isn't it? So that means some potential energy which is stored at certain height, that is gravitational potential energy, that is converted into kinetic energy. That means there is some work has done, isn't it? By converting potential energy to kinetic energy, there should be some work has done, so that I could say work is done in storing potential energy, work is done in converting potential energy into the kinetic energy. So in all these cases, work should be done. Now let us derive an expression for the potential energy. So how we are going to derive this? We are going to consider this as an example. So this is the initial position of the object. Okay, now I have raised this object to certain distance. So that means I can write this one as certain distance, means certain height I have raised the object. This position I will consider A position, and this position I am going to consider as B position. Here B position is this one. This is the paper I have considered. This is the initial position or the reference position I can take. So with respect to this is the certain height. But if I consider with respect to ground, isn't it? Ground, if you have considered reference, means the height may vary. But with respect to what you are going to refer, that is the very important. So this is the reference point. From this reference point, this is the height which has reached by an object. So now here work I am going to do it, isn't it? Work is done against to the gravitation. So that means I am lifting that object. So I can derive work done is equals to force into displacement, isn't it? So I am doing a work on that object, so that object, that means I am applying force on it. Because of that, there is a displacement taking place. Now I can change it as work done equals to force into displacement, means certain height it is reached. So I can change into h here. Now I am applying a force on that against the gravity, isn't it? I am applying the force on this object that is against to the gravity. That means that force of gravity is nothing but a weight of an object, isn't it? I can write F as the weight of an object. That is, force of gravity is nothing but weight of an object. So since you know weight W is equals to M into G, directly I'll write in place of F as M into G into H here. Okay, so now work is done means that work done is stored as a potential energy. So work done, I can write it as P dot E. Okay, P dot E you are going to say for the potential energy is equals to mgh, or potential energy is also say as EP. EP is equals to mgh. This is the formula for the potential energy. Okay, now we have derived the formula for the potential energy. Now comes what is the unit of potential energy. So what is the unit of potential energy? When you are saying about work done, when you are saying about energy, it is all same, that is joule. So unit of potential energy is also a joule here. And if you say about the quantity, that means whether it is a scalar quantity or whether it is a vector quantity, so it is obviously a scalar quantity. Okay, I hope everyone have understood with all these example what is potential energy and what is the types of potential energy and what is the expression for the potential energy. If any doubts is there, we will discuss in a live session. Thank you.